Welcome back to the Jagged Edge, a very late one, so I do apologize, Javal, but how are you doing tonight?
Well, it's now that we've had almost a week to process everything and, not suicidal, I'm doing all right.
Not suicidal.
Panthers advanced. They gentlemen swept the Lightning 3-1. So, I mean 4-1. I don't care about basketball right now, so at least I have hockey. So, at least I got that going for me.
You got one South Florida team that's doing well. The
Yeah, I
other
mean,
two, I'm sorry. I'm a
I
Marlins
I don't
fan too, so I get it.
I don't want to talk about it, but I'm doing all right, man. Just glad I get to talk ball with John. Life
Yeah,
is
I'm
good.
clinically depressed from yesterday. We just need to hit like one open three, and then we're okay, but we
Yeah,
couldn't even hit.
our teams are both on the brink of elimination, so
Yep, live or die. How's my, let me see what
at
the
least
Heat's
at
doing
least
right now.
Paolo had that masterclass. So you have something for the agenda.
Oh, I just saw the score. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Oh, I mean,
sorry.
I knew it was not great, so
Yeah, that's fair.
it's
But
okay. We don't need to talk about one disappointing football team. We're gonna talk about the Jags. So
and yeah, speaking of Jags, draft wrapped up. We've almost had a full week to process everything. So, what are your initial thoughts after the class has been said and done?
well, it was first of all still funny just thinking Tony Khan in the in the war room with the neck brace and then just calling WWE the Harvey Weinstein of wrestling. But yeah, I mean, I guess well, first of all, go Tigers. I guess I mean it's very
Go
clear over there.
Sigers.
Yeah, so
Three of them, right? Three of
yeah,
them.
three in the first five picks, which is very funny. So almost all SEC drafts too when you look at everything. But
Hmm.
I guess national media was very low on our draft. I mean, there's some people. There was a Falcons fan saying that the only draft worse than the Falcons draft was our draft, which I mean,
Okay.
I don't. I don't think it's an insanely strong draft class, but compared to the past couple of draft class, I see the vision with this a lot more. It makes
Hmm.
a lot of sense. Even if I have I think they could have done a better job of maybe valuing players, but I think if the players hit, they will be at impact positions for the most part. So I do see the vision. So I mean, I guess we'll kind of just jump right into the draft. So obviously, we already talked about Brian Thomas, first round pick. He
Hmm.
goes Zoom. So we don't, I mean, not
Exactly.
too much to talk about, but I mean, I guess we'll kind of see. And then I guess since we are starting with the receiver, we can talk more about the Zay Jones news because rest in peace, Zay Jones. He was just cut. So, I mean, obviously with Brian Thomas selection, I mean, if they paid Ridley, then they probably would have cut Zay Jones regardless. So I think the fact I was a little bit surprised because with a rookie contract, you could have kept Zay Jones for contract relief, but
Hmm.
at the same time, he would have been wide receiver for the fifth pass. I mean, but he would have been behind Gabe, Kirk, Bryant, and Ingram, and he doesn't play special teams. So if your fifth passing option isn't going to play special teams and he's going to make 10 million, I can see the vision with cutting him. So I guess we'll kind of see, but I'm pretty excited for Brian Thomas. Second round pick, I think this is whenever
When it gets
this is
divisive, for
this
sure.
is this is an extremely bulky pick. And I
So a
think
bad
the
draft pick? I'm just kidding.
well, just let me pull up mock draftable because so second round pick, they take Mason Smith at 48, who if you pull up his mock draft chart, I'm looking at it right now. It's very funny because he's 93rd percentile in height, 95th percentile in wingspan, 94th in arm length, but he has the 4th percentile hand size. So he's got these
No.
giant arms
Oh
but
yeah,
tiny hands. It's so stupid.
it's like
But
if you see pictures where you're like, oh my goodness, it's just very it looks like a 2K like NBA
creative.
by player type of bullshit.
So I mean, I guess with Mason Smith, the thing with him is that I feel in this draft process, the media was very low on Mason Smith, and I understand why. So just some background. He was a five-star recruit coming out of high school, committed at LSU. And then his true freshman year, 21, he had 4 sacks in 7 games. So he had a lot of flashes. And then the second game, literally 10 snaps into the second season, in the first game, he tears his ACL. So right there, that's a year wasted. Then the third year is just trying to, you see that he's healthy, but he hasn't necessarily recovered. So just a hyper athletic defensive lineman with all the traits and ACL injury, and you knew Trent Baalke was just on full
Salivating at the
gas.
mouth. Salivating at
This
the mouth.
it just screams Baalke pick, and I think it's just it's very interesting because there are some people who are saying, why did they take Mason Smith this high? You know, he was going to be a third, fourth round pick. And then there's some people, like there was Matt Miller saying that he had Mason Smith ranked 50th on his big board. And I was listening to
Mhm.
the Jack Report podcast, and they're just saying that, this kind of an athletic profile, the five-star recruit background, he probably wasn't going to make it to 96 in the third round. So, I mean, maybe they could have traded down in the second, but at the same time, that's always,
A risky business because a lot of interior defensive linemen went
yeah.
during that second round.
Just yeah, interior defensive lineman and corners. So I'm definitely it's kind of where I do wish they would have gotten a corner, and I wasn't the biggest Nathan Smith fan, but I do think that for starters, I mean he's going to be third string three tech on the roster behind Eric Armstead and Roy Robertson Harris. So he really won't have to play that much right away. And I think he is in a good spot with
Mhm.
Nielsen because if he I mean, between the vets in the locker room and the coaching staff, if he can develop, he's got the athletic profile to be a superstar. So it's a very swing for the fences type pick. But I think if it does pan out, it's going to be an impact position. I mean, a defensive tackle that can rush the passer, those are hard to come by, especially in this class. And he has most of the athletic traits you need. So I, I don't want to try to grade too much of the picks, but I guess if I had to, I might just give it a C just because it's one of those things where you won't really see the full impact of the Mason Smith pick probably till year three, is my guess. I mean, no matter what, he's going to be behind Eric Arm, unless he just head and shoulders better than Eric Armstead, in which this case you'd have a great rotation. But I think with defensive tackle compared to last year when they took a third string tight end in the second round, everything looks a lot better. You compare it to the last draft. So I'm just glad they didn't take a fullback in the second round.
That's true. I'm gonna be the kind of defender of the pick. I feel like a couple of reporters were also kind of. I think Shipley is very much more of a fan. That's like one of the people that we kind of trust in the draft process, and at least there's a vision instead of like taking Brenton Strange in the second round last year. Like you said, you can see kind of where the vision is with the Mason Smith in the second round. They have defensive staff that are very familiar with a bunch of LSU guys two LSU guys they took on the defensive side of the ball with Matt House, the linebacker coach, who's the D coordinator at LSU during that big freshman year that Smith had at LSU. So the fact that there's a bit of familiarity there, as long with Nielsen being kind of a son of Orgeron's kind of system at defense, it kind of makes sense why they decided to go with, more familiarity than maybe, someone that you haven't worked with before. But like you'd said before, five-star recruit out of high school, we're coming out of ACL, six defensive coaches within 3 seasons too. A lot of instability in your development. So you're just kind of hoping that those traits come back and he can just kind of recover. But like I said, it is kind of a risk at the end of the day when he could have had somebody that will probably be more predictive year one than maybe Mason Smith will be for Jacksonville this coming season. But if it pans out, boy, they got a home run if he goes to live up to the potential that he had coming into LSU, like during his all freshman season.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's very boomer bust because I feel with Mason Smith, he's either going to be a very good player or he's going to be probably out not finishing his last contract here. So, I mean, at least it makes sense, even though I think they, could have tried to go for more of a third edge to play right away or a corner. I think they could have went for more impactful positions right away. But with Mason Smith and the staff, obviously you talked about him having a lot of coaches. It's
Hmm.
one of those picks where you just really have to see how everything will come into fruition because if Nathan Smith is good, then he's probably really good, and if he's a really good pass rushing three tech, then you're very happy with that pick. So
Hmm.
I mean, there are people who kind of said the build reminds him of Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons. So I'm not saying he's that good of a player, but we'll see. The good thing is he doesn't have to get a ton of snaps right away. So it's good, but also, your second round pick, you're not starting him right away. But then again, we gave a Brenton Strange second round pick, and he was a third string tight end. So at least with defensive tackle, you can realistically have a rotation, so you can actually see him make sense in the field. So I guess that's pretty much our thoughts on Mason Smith. And then in the third round, they finally get a corner, but I think probably not the corner people were expecting with Jerry and
Mhm.
Jones out of FSU. So he played his first year at Mississippi State, then transferred to FSU for 4 years. And he started playing on the outside, but he did not look great as an outside corner. Then went inside to nickel and played a whole lot better. So, the Jags are saying that he has inside versatility, but realistically, he probably will just he'll probably be competing for nickel, if not starting right away. So, I mean, with me, well, first of all, the draft call for Jarian was sick. Just him and seeing
Oh,
talking about MJD's
absolutely.
favorite player. In terms of players that I who are going to be great in the locker room,
Hmm.
I can definitely tell that, yeah, he's going to be
A
just a very
favorite.
passionate, yeah, a fan favorite, passionate player. You can tell he's got a lot of heart. So that part was great. And I mean, I think in terms of where media boards have it in, the Jags drafted him earlier than expected. But at the same time, even though he probably won't be an outside corner, they still did need a nickel corner to start.
Hmm.
So obviously, I would prefer if they took an outside guy. But I think if the fact that Jarian, I mean, he was an MJD fan, he's going to play a position at need too. I don't hate the pick also. It's one of those things where I just wish maybe they could have drafted him a little bit. That's kind of the theme of this draft. Where I don't hate the players they got, but I think they could have maybe drafted him a little bit later. I mean, with Jarian, I think he probably could have waited until 114 to draft him, but you know, I'm not upset I'm glad they got the player. I don't love the process, but the players that they have, I think they have potential and they
Yeah.
can start at roles that make
Yeah.
sense.
It's a lot of, was a player picked at the right time? Maybe not, but you can see the vision of where they're gonna play, and they actually have a vision of the timeline where the player's developing.
Because I mean, yeah, if Jaren's is starting nickel from day one, honestly, even if you could have gotten him in the fourth or fifth round, if he's good enough to start, then it's worth the pick. So I might give it a B, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to try to grade too much. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
focus on the process more than the players because you know,
It's shout out to him and his folks though. They let out a really good Duval after he was drafted on local news after he got drafted. Did you see
I
his
mean, yeah,
Duval?
I didn't see the duel actually. I
Oh,
wish.
bro, if you saw that, you'd be like A plus, A plus, A plus, A plus. Like
Well, the
everyone
fact
knew.
that you're stamping him, I definitely I can believe it too off the
Yeah,
fact that
a big
he
MJD fan growing up, so he knows the process of Jacksonville and Duval.
yeah, man, he's tuned in. So I mean, I think he's probably the pick I'm most excited to see besides Brian Thomas. Obviously, I mean, Brian Thomas fun he goes into, but if Jarian can start right away, plus the name Jarian Jones, that's a great
That
corner
sounds
name
like a
too.
very good secondary name. You're not wrong.
So we'll see
Alliteration,
what
Jacksonville Jaguars, Jerry and Jones.
Jarian
Hey.
Jones, Jacksonville Jaguar. He was meant to be, man. So I think for the process, I'm not a fan of the pick, but for the aura, the pick is that's where it need to be. So I'm definitely. I think it's a solid pick. I guess I really see. I mean, I'm just glad that they at least have a more depth at corner because even with Trey Harden's unsigned, which honestly I'm not upset. It still feels weird. I keep expecting him to sign back any moment now that
Yeah.
they're just going to sign him. I mean,
No
they
Trey
they
Herndon, no Shaq Quarterman, which is, he gave us the one play though. It's just like some seeing people take numbers that don't belong to like long-term Jaguars anymore just feels kind of weird. No,
yeah.
no.
I mean, I'm not upset that they don't have Trey, especially if they want to play more man coverage. So it makes sense. I guess hopefully him and Savage can step in, share that nickel spot every. Probably maybe Savage. We'll see how they swap it, but
Yeah.
if Jaren's your nickel, then it's good. And then Fourth round, I think probably the best value and need pick,
Mm-hmm.
Javon Foster, tackle from Missouri. So another SEC guy. And I think in terms of probably where big boards had him, might have been a little bit of a steal, if not close to where he had him. So, this is
Mm-hmm.
probably the first pick since Brian Thomas where the board matched their board matched the consensus big board. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad that they drafted a guy who can either maybe swing tackle or compete at guard. So, I mean, this is probably their best pick outside of Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
And, if with Cam and Walker Little not under contract for next year, being able to draft somebody who can compete under contract, at least you have somebody in the building. So whether he's better at guard or tackle, at least he drafted an offensive lineman at a good value for them. So I don't have too much tape on him, other than that he can play. He was a swing tackle. Well, he played mainly left tackle in Missouri, played a little bit of right. Maybe he might be a guard, but I mean, I think it's a very good pick, all things considered. So.
For sure. And I think the big trait, that really popped out to your captain there in Missouri. So a little bit of that leadership as well going into the offensive line. Like you said, we don't know what the offensive line situation will look in the future when, we have a bunch of big contracts that we handed out during this offseason, which will kick in more into next year. Still got to work on extension potentially for Trevor Lawrence, maybe Travis Etienne, along with some of the other rookies on that class, depending on how they play this upcoming season. So, very solid pick. Like you said, just matches the consensus of the board. And we'll go to the next one. We drafted another LSU guy.
Which is
Another,
not the
not just
consensus
another
of the board.
LSU guy, another LSU defensive tackle. So I think Baalke legitimately looked at how the trends of what got paid during this offseason for free agency and he said, oh, everybody was paying some defensive tackles. Let's double dip. And then let's double dip in the same school. I was like, oh, okay. I think I saw that. I was like, all right, I'm tuning out. I gotta go watch the Magic now. I think the Magic were already playing at the time where he had that second pick, so I couldn't really give a shit because Game 4 was more important at that time of the day. But after looking at it, I mean, people are very sour because they saw consensus like 230s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, taken in the fourth round. Like you said before, very bulky thing to kind of just follow what was like, hey, what are the jokes? Hey, Matt House, can you give me another LSU guy you like? I have nothing here. Here we go. Jordan Jefferson. Go ahead and get my guy for me.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely. It was weird. I just remember when I would be very funny. I wanted to look up his name in mock draftable. There's another Jordan Jefferson that went to LSU, but he was a quarterback,
Are you
not a
serious?
defensive tackle.
I remember that Jordan Jefferson actually, vaguely, but I do.
But yeah, I guess in terms of the pick itself, I mean, yeah, I heard his name and I saw his name on the mock draft sims, but he was so low where he didn't have a summary, so I didn't really know much about him. And
Mm-hmm.
then he's a third defensive tackle. So the thing is with this pick is the value there not really? They probably could have gotten him a round or two later, but also it's one of those things where if it hits, I mean, because he's gonna be the Hamilton backup. And I think he is I think for what he is, he's a good player. He just
Hmm.
hasn't done a lot of pass rush upside. So a lot of
Yeah.
teams are gonna think, oh, we can get a nose tackle that won't rush the passer in the fifth or sixth round. I mean, they did try to draft a nose tackle last year in the seventh, Raymond Vahasik, and he didn't really see the field. So, I mean, if they wanted to address it a little more aggressively, I understand that. I mean, I just wish maybe they drafted another outside corner here and then could have went Jefferson in the fifth round because probably would have been there. But I think if he does pan out, which I don't want to say he has a super high floor because as a nose tackle, I mean, I don't, and it's not guaranteed, but
Yeah.
if he's good at what he does, then he'll be valuable. He can play in the rotation, just stop the run. I mean, I just remember the Tennessee game where they couldn't stop the run at all. So, even though I don't love the process, but I think the player can play a valuable role just because if Hamilton doesn't come back from his injury fully healthy, or if he starts to look weak, or even if you just want a guy to spell him every now and then on running downs, I think it's good to have depth. I mean, their depth last year, defense tackle down the stretch was abysmal, and we just saw how teams were able to run on them, and that was the point of the defense is to stop the run, and they couldn't do it. So obviously, they have the coordinator from last year as a linebackers coach, so they knew a lot about those guys. So it's even though I don't think he'll. I mean, I guess we'll see him play a fair bit. So I'm very curious how this will work, but I think it has a strong chance to be solid. Where he can be a good 3 4 year, even if he's just 80% of what Hamilton was, where Hamilton for the first few years was just a great run defender, and then he didn't show much pass upside. They picked him in the third round, so I mean, he developed a little bit. He flashed a little bit more in camp, but even if he's just early year one and year two Devon, where he just sets the run and just does that, he'll still have a role and he could be in the NFL for a long time. So I guess we'll really see how that goes, even though fans weren't quite happy. And that's probably another one of people panned our draft. But yeah, in the fifth round now, they finally did take another corner. They double dipped at corner, which I'm not I'm not surprised they double dipped. I'm just a little surprised they kind of waited a little bit longer than I thought they would have, but at least they
Yeah.
tried to address it because, I guess at this point, Baalke just always drafts two corners, but instead of sixth and seventh round, it's third and fifth round, so a little bit better. But they draft DeAndre Prince. I wanted to say DeAndre, but it's Trey Prince
DeAndre, yeah, DeAndre
from
Prince.
Ole Miss, who was on the. So yeah, literally out of all the players they drafted, almost all of them are SEC players outside of two. Very funny.
Yeah.
So he was on the receiving end of a Brian Thomas touchdown, which is he was in a picture that the Jags used, which is very funny. So I don't really know too much about DeAndre Prince other than he did run pretty fast.
Hmm.
I know his speed was there. Let me just pull it. Yeah, his 40-yard dash time was a
4.38.
4.38.
Yeah.
So 10-yard split, 1 point. So he's got 97 percentile 10-yard split. So he's great in terms of that initial burst. He's 6'0", 183. So he's a little skinny, but yeah, at least he's got some height. The arm length is very small, though. He's only got 30 inch. So for the arm length is not quite what you want in terms of a Rashard coach, but he does have speed at least. So he's got solid broad jump. I mean, I don't know too much about him, but
You
it's
know,
corner depth. He's fast. Maybe he's a special teamer. I can't really hate the pick too much because they drafted a position at need and they double dipped. They got a guy who's not a bad athlete. So,
and it's just kind of funny though, since his worst game in college last season was against, he self-admittedly met Brian Thomas Jr., who is now
I
going
mean,
to be his
yeah, I
teammate.
think most defensive backs would say their worst games have come against LSU last year. So, I guess
In terms of the
we really have,
process,
yeah, we really have to see how this pick will fare. I mean, is he just going to be another practice squad, or is he just going to be another, Greg Jr. type that's just on preseason and flashes doesn't do much? I don't know. It's the fifth round pick, so I'm not losing sleep too much over it.
you
And they
just gotta
draft a
hope
player of
that,
need, so
every time you take somebody day three, you just kind of hope that, it pans out. At least one of them or two of
yeah,
them at the
just
very good
just
year.
one or two of them are either good special teamers or it can be good depth. So that's all you're asking for. So we'll see with DeAndre Prince,
And
and
a lot of
then
teams, I'll go to the next one because a lot of teams are really, really like looking forward to this new kickoff rule because the Jaguars just go and pick up a kick returner in the second, fifth round pick.
Baalke had to get his running back, even if he's not going to play running back. Baalke had
Yeah.
to get his running back. He had to
He can't
draft
help
one.
himself. He can't help himself.
He's drafted a running back every single draft.
Drafted a 5'9" scat back that played out of Texas, who was only known for like one kick return. Did they even like lead in like kick return average or whatever, or
I
they
I
just choose
mean,
someone that they're kind of familiar with in kick
people were
return game?
saying that he was the best returner in the draft. So,
Huh.
I mean, I didn't know anything about him on
Yeah, so
offense. He kind of plays, but
I can't admit that I
they
knew
got the
anything about
wrong running back, last name
him.
Robinson from Texas. So but I mean, the thing is, you draft special teamers on day three anyways. So
Hmm.
we'll see if he can do anything on offense. I do think they kind of need probably if to
A
round out
speed,
their
yeah.
another receiving back, just kind of get the ball in space. So I mean, we'll see if he can do anything offense. But if he's even just a solid second returner, then I think for the fifth round pick, it's not bad. I mean, we'll really see how the NFL is. It would just be, I'm prepared for them to try to get special teams guys, and then
Just
they
straight
just
up do
suck.
it with the draft picks for sure.
But I mean, he's a player and he returns, so we'll really see how Keelan does. Yeah, I mean, his 40-yard dash is a 4.42, so he's only 191 pounds. Yeah, 5'8", 191. So he's
Yeah.
small dude, but if he can just return well, then that's what matters. So speaking of special teams, I know some people are sick to their stomach. The Jags drafted a kicker, but what are you? We need the special teams maestro himself. You can talk all about Cam Little.
It's funny because Mia O'Brien warned us at the time we talked with her about looking into Cam Little. So the only kicker I didn't look at because I didn't know that he was not a senior. So the only like junior kicker that was draft eligible that flew over my head in my scouting thread is the one that the Jaguars took because of course it was. But big time kicker at Arkansas. Made a bunch of 50-yard kicks at last season. Very cool, very composed, very confident kicker. Like, people are going to be a bit more iffy because usually when you pick a draft pick when it comes to kickers, it usually doesn't turn out pretty well. I think the one last year that I remember vividly was Jake Moody for the Niners. He struggled early on, but he kind of got confident toward, later on the season, so it may work out for them. McPherson was also a day three pick that I remember from the Bengals that worked out for them. I think Tyler Bass was a day three pick that worked out for the Buffalo Bills, former FAU guy. So, you know what? If it works out, great. If it doesn't, you're gonna be, oh my goodness, why not just pick someone UDFA? But at the end of the day, you pick someone you're confident that can, kick well for you. Because there was a kicker I think picked right before him too.
Yeah, I think there was two kickers that went before him, so he was the third. There was no other kickers drafted afterwards, so in terms of the Jags process, I think it makes sense because they did need a kicker. So, at this point in the draft, if you just want to get a head start on UDFA, which I feel with most of the fifth through seventh rounders, you kind of are just getting a head start. Not every team has a draft grade on
Hmm.
guys super high. So, they said, hey, kickers are getting drafted. We want to get a kicker now.
Who's the top of our board? Oh, this guy. All right, there you go.
I'm not upset, just kind of, I guess we'll see. I mean, obviously, if he doesn't win the job, oh, disappointing. But it's the sixth round pick. I mean, how many of those sixth round picks hit regardless? It's one of those things where obviously you want him to be good, but if he's not good, it's not going to tank the team. So,
Yep. In
and
Jacksonville
then
special teams terms, you want him to be Josh Scobie and not Brian Anger, but he wasn't taken with a third round pick, so I can't
yeah,
say
I,
anything
I
about
was
that.
gonna say teams are taking, dude. The Bears took a punter in the fourth round. We were going. Anything after round five, I can stop. I feel kickers after, if he's a really good kicker, I would consider round five and then round six. If you're a really good punter, then maybe round six and seven. But
Hmm.
just what are we? What are we drafting? The Bears had four picks, and he's one of them on a punter.
It must have been really high on the board.
I mean, I heard they had punting issues last year, so I don't want to say it's not warranted, but the overdrafting of specialists needs to be studied. So
Yeah, then we got one more pick, and I just looked at his relative athletic
the
score.
second
Yeah, right, right. I was pulling up the Daily's place for Saturday Night Collision for AEW. I was just looking at his relative. I was like, holy shit, this dude's an athlete.
this is
Miles
the
Cole from Texas Tech.
maybe dude. I think the three most bulky picks recently are literally Trevon at one, Mason Smith at 48, and this is the most insane bulky pick ever. Miles
Hey, hey,
Cole.
it's acceptable because it's the seventh round.
I mean,
Oh, this
I'm
this
not
super freak of
upset.
an athlete is like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean that's when you take a swing on Miles Cole. I'm on mock draftable. 6'6", 278 pounds, so 92 percentile in height, 82 in weight. He's got a 98th percentile wingspan, 99 percentile arm length, and he's got 59. He's got bigger size hands than Mace. Dude, it's just I'm not upset. It's a seventh round pick. It's just Miles Cole's literally if Travon Walker was in college for 5 years instead of 2 years and was even a worse of a pass rusher.
Mhm.
He's just a moldable raw ball of clay, which is scary because I mean I don't know how he was in college that long and didn't learn anything how to rush the passer. I mean he's the type of player you watch the tape, you see why he won the seventh round, but I mean hey, combine length. So I mean combine warrior. Baalke just saw that wingspan and said, I have to get him no matter what. So another guy with if Nielsen can stay for even 2 years and he can develop him, maybe have some flashes a little bit. I mean, I think Travon is probably the perfect player to learn from in just terms of how to use that length. I mean, he's he's just basically I'm trying to think. He's the wish version of Travon Walker, I guess. Where if you can even just get him to be a little bit good, then it's fine. Seventh round pick. I mean, worst case, if he's a special teamer too, that's also fine. So I don't really have too much to say. It's just it was a very funny because Baalke the started. I think this whole draft though, he definitely prioritized athletes more so than anything else, which is not a bad process to have. Just
No.
looking at a lot of the guys he picked. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. fast, Mason Smith fast for his size, wingspan guy. Jerry Jones on a 4.38. I don't. Foster is an average athlete. Jordan Jefferson very strong. He had the most bench reps at the combine. Deontre Prince ran a 4.38. Keelan Robinson, special teamer, and then Miles Cole. So they just drafted a lot of athletes, which the plan was, hey, we don't really care about the consensus media board. We're just gonna try to get our guys, get them in the system, and hope they can develop. And I think in terms of at least the defensive players with this staff, I have a better I think they have a better chance of developing than maybe in the past.
Mhm.
Hopefully we'll see if Mason Smith can be anything useful. We'll see what Chris Richard can do with Jaron Jones and DeAndre Prince. And so, I'm not head over heels for this draft.
Mhm.
A lot of it just comes down to can they develop those guys so they can get home runs from their swings? Because if Mason Smith is good, then this class gonna be a
Worth
lot
it.
better.
Yeah, it's worth it if they can actually develop. And that's the biggest issue with the Jaguars over however many years we've
They just
supported
haven't
this
been
team.
able to develop.
Yeah, their own guys. I mean, usually when we
Well,
do develop guys that are, later round picks is because they kind of fell to us. Just one in particular, Telvin Smith. Fifth round pick should have gone probably day two or day three, but at the fact that he had kind of character issues in the combine kind of fell over our lap. Very elite athlete, kind of undersized, but he made plays in FSU. That's just kind of the guys that kind of only work out usually for Jaguars. When you actually take the guys that kind of show up on tape, they are trying to rely on athletes. But if any coaching staff has a pretty good track record of turning chicken shit into chicken salad, Nielsen did a really good job with that in Atlanta last season. So you kind of hope you get a lot of the same this season for the Jags defense because the biggest issue for to the end of last season was the defense falling apart, not being able to stop the run, not able to get off the football field on third downs, and that'll just be a big thing to look at whenever the real football starts in August and September. Hell, even in the training camp in a couple months.
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious to see how Nielsen. I think he affected this draft and just kind of seeing. I think probably Nielsen and Trent are kind of a match made in heaven because they probably both want a lot of similar players, defensive linemen, look for a lot of traits. So, you
Hmm.
know, if obviously not the one being the coach, but will have a lot of influence. So if Nielsen and his staff can get the most out of even three of the defensive players, because I think Brian Thomas, even if he's not a superstar wide receiver, I think just because of the size of speed, he has a solid floor. So I'm not too worried about him. I mean, he could bust, but it's the NFL, so I don't say never, but I think he has a solid chance. So even if Jerry's not great, if Nathan Smith is great, or if they just get a few of these guys to develop, hopefully Cam Little can be our kicker for the next 15, 20 years. That'd be great, but we'll see. So I'm very curious. And then I guess just to end, I was looking at the UDFA list because I think some of the UDFAs might
Mhm.
have been. I'm surprised they went undrafted over the players that they drafted. There's
Hey
a couple
man,
names.
let neck brace Tony cook. That's what I told one of my friends.
Yeah, I
Neck
mean,
brace Tony was going crazy in UDFH this year.
so just a couple guys who I think might have a chance. Josh Cephas, receiver from UTSA. People thought he was a Shrine Bowl. He was a Shrine Bowl guy. People thought might be a late round pick. Another receiver, Wayne Ruby, David White. They got five receivers in UDFA. So Tony was trying to attack receiver aggressively, which I'm not upset with. Dang, I just Josh Stevens is 6'3", 185. This receiver was 5'11", 197. So very
Mhm.
funny looking at the difference in body types. But and then also one other guy, safety Josh Proctor from Ohio State. People thought he was a late rounder, so the Giants used some more safety depth this year. So I don't know too much about the rest of the UDFA's, but
Those are two that really stand out, the Ohio State guy and Josh Cephas from UTSA, especially with Zay Jones getting cut yesterday. You can tell they want looking for a different type of receiver for Trevor Lawrence to throw the football to this coming
yeah,
season. So like I said, I'm always excited when we get closer to, rookie camps as well as training camp because I will definitely try to go out one day in camp to see, what everything looks like when it's that time of the day again.
yeah. I mean, I I'm definitely excited to see the rest of the receiver room now. Oh, we didn't talk about the news that Jarvis Landry's going to be at the
And the
rookie
rookie
mini
mini
camp
is
for
very
just
weird
a
out of
bunch
nowhere.
of 20 somethings and this 31-year-old Pro
Yeah.
Bowl receiver who knows how to. I mean, hey, if he's even helpful for training camp, then he can be on the 90-man roster. I don't really have any problems. He's not going to command a lot of money, so.
Hmm.
But just very random, but funny that Jarvis is coming to the Ricky camp. So I'm definitely excited to see the receiver room, how it all shakes out. Because, now top three, obviously, you've got Kirk, who's probably going to start at the year as the 1A. I think Kirk and Ingram, in terms of targets, will be the top two. And then probably it'll be a battle between Gabe and Brian, who will probably kind of get the most vertical shots. And then behind those guys, you have got Duvernay, who's I think is probably just going to be the better Agnew. Maybe not on special teams as much, but in terms of an actual receiver, you got Agnew.
Who knows,
I
man? New
mean,
special team rules. We'll see. Hopefully we get a couple more of those this year.
yeah. I mean, we'll see. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if Parker even makes the roster right now.
I
If
don't
Keelan,
I
if
wouldn't have him on my roster.
it really just depends on if he is better returner than Keelan Robinson. That's what the thing. If he's not a better returner, then I don't think he makes the roster because you're not going to keep, unless you just really want another slot receiver. But even then, I think Duvernay can play in the slot as well. He's probably a little more versatile, but So you have the first three guys you mentioned. You got Duvernay, maybe Parker. You still got Tim Jones and Elijah Cooks, which I mean, probably two of those. I still want to see maybe if Elijah Cooks has something. I feel Tim Jones is kind of, I don't want to say it's super run its course, but I feel
Yeah,
he'd
really,
have to,
really be good at camp to kind of keep his roster spot.
because he's probably still a good blocker, which for special teams might matter, his blocking. So, I could see him being valuable because he's a good blocker on special teams, but he really didn't do much I mean, granted, none of the other receivers did a lot outside of when those guys went down. So
Hmm.
I'm just glad they tried to actually get even more depth. I just don't want to be tricked because I remember last year thinking, oh, the receiver room's so deep, they got so many guys, and then Gabe, and then Zay got hurt, and then Kurt got hurt, and then the receiver room was just in shambles. So obviously, we'll see how everything comes to fruition. But between the draft and UDFA, how are you feeling, I guess, just about the roster? What do you think can kind of need to improve? And just what are the vibes right now?
Every just like we improved, every NFL, the 31 NFL team, other NFL teams also improved. So at the end of the day, it's just what we look at camp. It's kind of I gotta have to throw cold water over the whole thing because I remember being super excited after training camp last year after seeing Calvin Ridley in person. Everybody was just buzzing how everyone looked, but at the end of the day, it just whatever happens in training camp more likely than not doesn't affect on the field. Maybe it's just the negativity of being a Jaguar fan for so many
That's
years.
fair.
But at the end of the day, we just got to see if the new coaching staff, especially on the defensive side of the ball, can really, really get this team to a whole nother level because I think the offense will definitely be fine more than the defense. The defense definitely has the more question marks because of the new system. It's just at the end of the day, it's just a wait and see as always. I'll enjoy the last few months of the off season. We got 3 months till we get to see them in pads. So I'm just gonna embrace the time off that we have now that the draft process is finally over. We'll get Shipley no Zach Goodall. We just talked about Shipley earlier tomorrow to kind of break down things more in detail in depth because we definitely need a bit more knowledge on some of the picks that kind of pop out to him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how I look everything after, I definitely think in terms of the whole offseason, they've improved a solid bit. There's still some areas and where I think they need to, mainly just probably I would have loved to see an earlier outside corner because we don't really know what's the fifth round guy, and then still getting another edge. I mean, they drafted Miles Cole, but he's just a practice squatter at best. He's not really going to play. He's not going to see significant snaps. So I just hope that whether they get maybe somebody really flashes in training camp or they sign a vet edge because they tried to sign Clowney last year, tried to sign Ngakwe, it didn't work out. And they have
Mm-hmm.
Travis Gibson, but if you could just get one more
One
guy,
more.
especially because when I was looking at the Jag Report podcast, they were saying that the reason they didn't want to get any of these rookie edges was because they wanted a guy who could set the run and be a
You
three down
have
player.
$30 million in cap. Do not make the same mistake as last
I just
offseason.
just I was gonna
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
Travis is a solid start because he's already better than Chase on. So they have improved. I just think they can still be a little bit more aggressive around the margins because it never hurts to have quality depth. If Trevon or Josh miss one game, then it's literally just Travis Gibson and who else are you sending off the edge. So they have Yasir Abdullah. I don't know if he really fits the scheme that well. I mean, he's not running at the edge either, unless he's just going to be a third down guy, which maybe he can be. So, to me, I really do hope that if they just get one more veteran edge and then maybe another depth corner, but I don't know. There's some people saying they try to sign Xavier Howard, which I mean, I guess
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of just he more so a name than anything. He's not elite, but obviously, it can't hurt to have more corner depth as well. So,
Didn't people talk about Marshawn Lattimore being a potential trade target as well?
I mean, Saints connection is there. So, I wouldn't be upset and I don't fit. Just because I think to me, they really just, I don't want to look too far ahead, but between tackle and corner, I just think they need to get more depth at those positions. So, and obviously they did draft one of those guys, but probably, if I had to guess next year, the positions that they'll draft in the first round, it would either be a corner to replace Tyson Campbell or a tackle to replace Cam Robinson or Walker Little. So, but yeah, man, I mean, I guess in terms of compared to the last two drafts, this is definitely the best we felt coming out of it.
Yeah, in a
So,
long time, I
well,
feel it.
yeah, I mean, I was gonna say 2022,
The urban
I felt
draft.
okay. It was just I think it was just the Muma pick at the time that made me really scratch my head because where are they gonna play this guy? There's not a pick that makes you scratch my head and think, oh, where's he going to play right away?
Hmm.
So, and they didn't do, even if there was, it wasn't an early pick. So, but yeah, man, I feel that this roster is definitely better, but there's still a few more, one or two more players to really take this off the top. So I'm just trying to wonder what even vet edge would they be
It's
interested?
Carl Lawson kind of stands out of the ones that are still out there. Ngakwe is a name that's very familiar with Jacksonville, which, they we've heard a lot about how they want guys that can play the run though, so maybe Ngakwe isn't gonna be that guy. But at the end of the day, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to find any unsigned players at edge because outside of Carl Lawson, who I'm still surprised hasn't signed, it's not a ton of guys who I'm thinking, all right, yeah, they need to go out and sign. So I guess we'll really see how everything goes.
Hmm.
And then yeah, I just want to fast forward to training camp, not even just to see the players, but really the development of some of these younger players, as well as the guys from the last 2 years, because they drafted Greg Jr., Buster Brown, 2022, and then Braswell and Eric Hallett, last year 23. Is the staff maybe they can get more out of those players? Because if you can also get something from last those two draft classes, that would help out a ton. I mean, obviously they didn't really contribute that much outside of Antonio and Anton.
Hmm.
So, and you were talking about Parker, who's probably the third best rookie. He might get cut. So if you can just get, I mean, I don't want to. I'm not super high. I feel strange even if he does play well, it won't have big impact. But I think the guy I really am curious to see with this new scheme is Braswell. There's a lot of good Rutgers defensive players. So if he can be another one of those guys and just be a good depth corner, I feel a lot better. I don't think there's anybody they have at edge who can really be a guy, but I think if there might be some players at corner who can be solid depth. But I guess it's all for now. But yeah, John, just we talked a lot about the drafts and
We're gonna talk more
this
tomorrow because we want someone that's a bit more in the know to talk about the draft too.
But yeah, just really quick, just taking a look at some of these vet edges available. So Emmanuel Ogba, Carl Lawson, Calais is still out there. I mean, he gets at the edge. Charles Harris, Jerry Hughes. I mean, Dewan Smoot's still out there. Maybe if he heals back from the Achilles, even better. I feel even worst case scenario if they had Smoot as edge four,
Hmm.
that still would be better because if he was able to be what he was before the injury as your fourth vet, that's okay. I mean, yeah, Shaq Lawson also out there, so there's a few guys that they could sign. It's just a matter of who do they think fits the scheme. Or are they actually trying to go do it? So, but yeah, man, just I'm excited for training camp. I know it's still a long ways to go, but
Yeah.
excited for just to really see the players, how they develop, and especially not only this year's draft class, but last year's draft class. But fingers crossed that they sign an edge. That's all I'm looking for.
Like I said, you can't make the same mistake twice, can you? There's no
Oh,
possible chance.
this is the same team that drafted Chad Newman and drafted Ventrell Miller, so they can't make the same mistake twice.
It's true. It's true. So many caps, so much cap space too. It doesn't seem right?
Yeah, I wonder if the cap is just going to be for flexibility if they want to try to trade for a player,
Yeah.
or if because even if you sign Trevor to an extension,
It
the
won't kick
cap's
in
not
until
really matter. So
it won't kick in until 2 years anyways, right? Because that 5th year extension's already in
yeah,
place. It's just paying for the future afterwards.
I mean, I'm not saying that you have to spend every single dollar of your cap, but if it's just a 1 year deal, it won't hurt. So
Yeah, it won't.
and edge is the position where there's always guys available, especially even looking at if you just get even you don't have to get Carl Lawson, but even Emmanuel Ogba would be solid.
Hmm.
Just get a guy who can be an upgrade over what they had last year, which is not saying much. So
I mean, yeah. I mean, the only thing
anything
that's
anything is better than
what we had last year. Yeah, exactly. We're done with that. That it's a new season already, Javal. I think we can get past that. he wasn't
I
productive for us. It doesn't take any more time and effort to be productive about him at
Are
the
you
end of
ready
the day.
for Chason to have a 7 sack season in Carolina?
I think we all have hopes and dreams, man. We all have hopes and dreams, and I hope Caleb on Chason can get 7 sacks in Carolina. Then more power to him. I'll be surprised if he gets three. He only got up to two with us, so God bless if he can even like get to three.
Baker Mayfield's gonna see him coming off the edge and say, "Oh, sweet, this dude again."
Exactly.
All right, well, yeah, I think that's all for now. Kind of trap this, but um,
Throwbacks win. That's the only thing I'm waiting for before trading cap now.
I just need Brian Thomas to change his number because right now he's at 80 for training camp. That
Hmm.
Brian Thomas in the throwbacks with the number 11 on will be amazing.
We'll just have to see. Like I said, my wallet's in danger whenever that day comes.
All our
It,
walls will
it's
be in
in it's in
danger.
pure danger. Nike Dry Fit throwback logos. My wallet would be in grave danger.
All of our wallets will be in danger, my friend.
Hey man, they got to pay for the stadium somehow, right? Stadium of the future. All right, we'll go back here tomorrow. I'll probably a lot earlier, so we'll just ask. I think it was just good to ask him whatever he wants to talk about because I know he's started on the process of hopping onto the Jaguar wire. So at the end of the day, we'll just see you tomorrow.
All right, John,
Talk,
take care.
talk to you soon. Sorry about the heat. That well, we kind of expected that.
I don't know what you're talking about. The Florida heat? I mean, Florida's always hot. What are you apologizing for the weather for?
Oh, before we go, we have to talk about this a little bit, right? Kendrick and Drake. Oh my
We, we,
goodness.
we,
That
we can save that for
Yeah,
tomorrow.
because I forgot Goody kind of we can talk about that with a third person, just a little bit sidetracked. It's unbelievable developments on a random Tuesday out of all days. All right, we'll talk about it more tomorrow.
All right, my man. Stay safe.